Okay, what I need you to do, we have a lot to do today, so I want to make sure that we use all this time extremely wisely. I see a lot of phones out. I need them to go bye-bye. See ya. Thank you so much for your service. All right. So I need you to take out this student example that you have in front of you. And since this is our last chance to help you gain understanding of what we're looking for before you do summary number 3, we're going to put everything we have into it. Okay? So today we're going to take a look at 2 pieces. The one you're going to peer review, but we're going to do this one first. So quiet times, take out all of your highlighters, and I need a writing utensil. Yeah? Okay. So I'm taking a look at the MLA here, and I see the margins, the page numbers, the heading. Everything to me looks correct. Each paragraph is indented. There's no additional spaces between paragraphs. We're happy with that. We take a look that the page number in the top right-hand corner is nice, and the page number in the 3rd page, top right-hand corner, is also nice. I take a quick look here at the citations. These are ones that we've gone over in class, but there's a few things I check for. The italicization of the journal title, that everything is lowercase or capitalized accordingly, the italicization of the database, and the DOI, and then the period at the end of the citation. Everything is looking good here so far. So the last thing I look at for MLA is I look at the in-text citations. And in this student example, the in-text citations are correctly formatted. As I explained in that little et al video, these in-text citations look ugly and they feel wrong, but they are unfortunately correct. Yeah? If you put page numbers in your citation for your source number 4, I don't know where you got them, friends, right? And that video reminded you that if there's no page numbers in the source, we don't put them anywhere. So this paper is just full of citations that say the exact same thing and don't specify where the information is because they didn't give us a page, right? Hi, these two, 1, 2. So first things first, I take a look also that the title is centered, that it's a unique title. If you have a title that's taking up 2 lines because the title of your article is long, title it something different. You should never take up an extra line of your paper just to fit the entire name of the article in your title. So this unique title I really like. It summarizes what we're talking about, and it does a nice job. Loving it. Everything's capitalized correctly. MLA at this point, I would give a 4. So take out your rubric here. I'm going to have you fill out the rubric for this piece because I want you to have it with you as you're writing summary number 6 so you can take a look. This summary is not perfect, but it is a summary that someone turned in yesterday, right? Like this is from somebody in one of my 2 CE English classes, okay? I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying it would get a good score and bring your summary grade to an A. So that's all we're looking for. Is that right? Does that make sense? So tell me what sentence, if we're looking in order, what sentence is our context sentence? So a lot of you made some mistakes with your context sentences in summary number 4. And the biggest mistake you can make is to put something in that context sentence that the author said. Why? Because you have to introduce the author formally before you say anything they said, because in order to cite them, you have to have introduced them formally first. So if anything in this context sentence is something the author said, it's biased because you can't cite it because you haven't introduced the author, right? But take a look at what they wrote. Superheroes play a large role in today's popular culture and American society. If they had just said in society, it would have been too vague. Which society? Are we talking about Nice? Are we talking about Paris? Are we talking about American society, right? Let's be specific. So this is our context sentence. So I need for you to highlight it in one color, and then I need for you to write the following. Unbiased and overall context. That's what we're looking for. It's very, very simple. This person did it very succinctly, right? Take a different color highlighter, and we're moving on, friends. Now tell me, our next step is to introduce the author in 3 components. Friends, what are those 3 components? The title of the article, The author's name and what else? Here's what gets weird. We have multiple authors. So whose credibility do we discuss? You discuss their credibility all collectively, or you talk about the credibility of the first author in specifics, and then the rest of the authors vaguely. So you could have said Sarah M. Coyne, a researcher in child development at Brigham Young University, and other authors who were experts in the field, comma, right? That is still one clause, and that would have been just fine, right? But if you only discuss the credibility of the one author, that's not fair to the other authors whose names are on that are being erased essentially by that et al. Right? You need to talk about them all collectively, but I also would have accepted something very simple like so it says the way that they structured this sentence is really interesting, and I think for this purpose they did a nice job. They said in the article, so here's the introduction of the article, and they've put it correctly in MLA with the comma inside the quotation marks. So here's the article introduction. And the thing that's interesting is they also used this phrase at the beginning to introduce it. Based on the videos that we watched last time, what is this little phrase, the in the article, comma? What is that? It's an introductory phrase. That's why they put a comma right after that. But it's going to become, if he would have continued, since he continues this sentence, it's not an introductory phrase anymore. Now the title is an appositive or an introjectory phrase. We're shoving the title in the middle, right? So we have the title of itself, and then, so it's saying in the article, specialists, plural, in their fields, and authors of the article. That's a beautiful way to introduce them all, right? So I'm saying that that's the authors, apostrophe outside the S, meaning multiple authors, right? Authors' collective credibility. Talk about their credibility as a group. That's the quickest way to do it. You could have talked about Sarah Coyne's credibility, but you would also need to put in the rest of the authors as well. And then we have the introduction of the author's name, Sarah M. Coyne, full name, et al. Common mistakes that most of you made were that you put a comma after Sarah M. Coyne's name, like you did in the citation. It doesn't go there in the actual sentence. I don't know how you can't just change rules at the drop of a hat and just memorize all of them. I'm just kidding. It's hard. It's okay if you got it wrong, right? So we have the introduction of the author's name and the other authors using et al. If you use the words and others, it doesn't count. You have to use et al. Because some smart person some long time ago decided that that's the way we should do it. So we have to use et al. And remember with et al, we have to no comma here, and then the period needs to be there with the et al, but they've created an appositive phrase with the author's names, so a comma has to go after it so we have a gross period comma situation that feels yucky, but it's right. It's gross, right? So that's the author introduction, but notice how they've made one big sentence that includes the author's introduction and the thesis. I don't recommend doing that because already the sentence is long and clunky because we have the et al. In there, multiple authors, we have the introductory phrase, the appositive push-in of the title. I recommend ending it there and then starting a new sentence. And the reason this person made a bit of a mistake here, because I think because the sentence was already so long, their thesis was unnecessarily short and not detailed enough. So that would be my issue with it, right? So now we're looking at their thesis, and we have that these authors elaborate, a great annotated verb, nice job, friend, elaborate on the negative impact superheroes can have on children and how they poorly affect American society. So remember, the thesis has to do two things, right? The thesis has to tell me whether or not it has a positive effect on American society. So that's thesis part 1. Right? But then thesis part 2 was to actually say what the point of their article was. And they attempted it. They said they elaborate on the negative impact superheroes can have on children, right? That is part 2 of the thesis, but what do you think my problem is going to be with that? Does this thesis give me any actual information? It just tells me that there's a negative impact on children. A thesis needs to be detailed enough to tell me a negative impact on children because I need a because there and it's not there, right? They did attempt both parts of the thesis. They just didn't do it well, right? So while the parts are there, I would give them a proficient on this, but sophisticated would be to expand the details here. Give me the because. Yeah.
Would you recommend like doing 2 sentences?
I think 2 sentences is a great idea.
One about society and one about
That's a great idea. So if you wanted to put the 2 parts of your thesis in 2 separate thesis sentences, lovely, do it. Yes, right? And that's why I recommend putting the introduction to the author in a separate sentence than the thesis, because if you're trying to put it all in one sentence like this person did, not only is it not clear and concise, but you start to shortchange your thesis because the sentence is already too long. Do you see why that works out there? So for this thesis itself, even though on our rubric it includes the introduction and the body, I would give the thesis and the introduction, I would give it a 3. They did all the components, they're all there, but what they're missing is going the sophisticated route for their thesis. And that's the thing that would have made it a 4 for me. Do we see the differentiation there? How we're going from good to better to best? Okay, so we've done our introduction. We need to take a look at their body. We need to make sure that they have 2 or 3 supporting points and that each of those supporting points has been cited, right? And usually we'd like a page number there, but we don't have them there because of reasons. Okay, so Coyne et al., what I would have loved to see here, what am I missing here at the beginning of this paragraph? I would have loved to have a transition here. It's a little abrupt to just be like, boom, right? I would like to see in explanation or in detail or furthermore, something very simple, but I would like to see transition language here. And they're missing it here too. So not having a transition there isn't necessarily wrong, but it isn't stylish, right? So I would mark that from a sophisticated down to a proficient for their writing style, because they're missing those transitions and I wish they were there. It would help guide me through the information a little bit better, okay? But let's take a look at their main points. So Coyne et al. Suggest, and the thing that's really interesting here is the way that they phrased this. Because now we're talking about MLA. It's how every time Coyne is mentioned, now they've introduced the author, right? They only need to talk about the author by last name, but you must always have the other authors acknowledged there. Can you imagine working for years on a piece of research and then some high school kid just didn't include you in their paper about it? That would be upsetting, right? That'd be rude, right? So that et al. Means a lot of people's work. You have to put it there. No comma after the author's name. So it should just be Coyne et al. And then tell me what they did. Here's your annotated verb. It could be suggest or suggests. Which one should it be? So we have to have what's called subject-verb agreement, which means our subjects, our plural, the verb that they're all doing together collectively needs to be singular. And you don't need to know the theory behind why that is what it is, but the way you figure it out without knowing the theory, right, behind it, is you just read it out loud. But as you read it out loud, you don't say et al has to be there. You don't say it, you just say and others in place of it. So if I said, Coyne and others suggests the idea, that sounds gross, right? You don't have to know why it's wrong, you just know that it is wrong. So we say Coyne and others suggest the idea. That's right, it's a singular verb. This person has done it correctly. So happy, right? So take a look. A lot of the things that you missed on summary number 4, if your score went down or kind of stayed the same, your skills were good, but your MLA struggled because of incorporating that et al. And there's a reason that I put that et al. One in the 4th position, because because that's what is most helpful for you to learn at that time, right? So Coyne et al. Suggests the idea of children identifying with superheroes and mimicking them. However, that's a great transition word, right? I just wish that there would have been more to guide me through. However, superheroes nowadays use violent means to solve problems, and this message is being passed to young viewers that look up to those heroes. Cited it, crushed it. That's my point number one. Loved it. They cited it. So happy with how they did that. Other than missing the transition language, it's crushing it in terms of the body of the paper so far. So I'm going to look for my next point here. Coyne et al. Also refer. So is it refer or refers? Refer. So the way I figure that out is I say Coyne and others also refer, right? Or Coyne and others also refers to. Multiple people don't do separate verbs. They do it all together, right? In a singular fashion, yeah? Coyne et al. Also, and this word also is a great transition word. It's underappreciated, but it's great. This writer is telling me, here's my next point, y'all. This is number 2. They did a really good job of pointing that out for me. Coyne et al. Also referred to a study they recently conducted. I love that they're mentioning the study because that's the whole meat of the piece, which has data that implies engagement with superheroes results in more aggressive behavior and not the pro-social and defending behaviors producers were hoping for. That's really, really lovely explanation of what happened in that giant piece. Really loved how they took that whole thing and was able to concisely communicate that. These results show that the positive behaviors taught by superhero media is being trumped by their violent approach to justice. The use of this word there, right here, is a little bit vague because I don't know if we're talking about the media, the behaviors, or the results. Does that make sense? What's that? Oh, so I don't know here, this there right here. It's vague, and I would mark that as a stylistic error because I don't know what this there actually means, right? I don't know, I mean I know, right? But technically, in a writing fashion, I don't know if this there refers to one of these other 3 subjects and nouns that's in the sentence. So be careful when you're using there or they or it, because it could be vague depending on how you've set up that vague pronoun in the rest of the sentence. If there's only one thing up here, then it would have been okay. But since it could refer to more than one, that's a stylistic error that I would mark down. Okay? But they did an incredible job of pointing out this point, so which is ultimately the behavior being impressed on young viewers. I love the elevated writing and language that they used here. So this is point number 2. So I can see that they've highlighted 2 main points and done a really lovely job of communicating those, and I think they pointed out the most important things about the article. I love their main points. So when I go to my rubric, I would say they got a 4 in the body. I would say they got an almost 4 in the introduction. If it weren't for that vague thesis, it would be a 4 overall. But because that vague thesis, it's not sophisticated, I would, and go back to your rubric here, I would give the introduction and body a 3. Proficient, so happy with it, it's beautiful, right? We just need them to elevate that thesis a little more to get that sophistication point. But we did notice, and this is when I grade your papers, this is what I'll do. I start you always at a 4, and the whole time I'm grading you, I'm rooting for you. I'm looking for reasons not to downgrade that rubric points, right? But I've seen 2 major stylistic errors, the lack of transition language and that vague pronoun. It was only 1, and the rest of the writing was really elevated. So right now, before I read on, we're at a 3, and I'm hoping I don't have to downgrade it anymore. Okay? So now we're going to move into the conclusion. Remember, the conclusion has 3 parts, and they can be in any order. So let's try to identify those 3 parts. The first one, and I would have loved some transition here, Coyne et al. Claim that superhero media is poorly influencing young viewers. So I'm seeing right here that we've identified 1 who cares, right? And I'm looking for 2 specific who cares, right? Because of the aggressive and violent approach used by the heroes. American parents loving this. It makes me so excited. This person has now identified a second who cares. That fulfills what I asked for, right? And they've explained why each of those who cares should care. And so these are their so whats. Superhero media is poorly influencing young viewers. That's why they should care. Because of the aggressive and violent approach, that's why the first group should care. And then parents should be mindful of how much superhero media they allow their kids to partake of. That tells me why the second group should care, right? Because of the negative outcomes. So I have who cares. I have two of those. I need at least two specific groups of people, and why they should care. They did a lovely job of doing that. I'm so happy so far. They're sitting at a 4 with the conclusion. And it's at this point when I always cross my fingers that you've actually understood what the big picture is. Some of you are still really struggling with that. And so if your big picture said something like, and this would affect American society greatly. Like, I respect your attempt at a big picture, but you didn't say anything specific at all. It's not a big picture. I saw you go there, you dipped your toe in the water of big picture, but you didn't bring it home, right? So let's see if this friend did bring it home. They said, I like the word if, because it makes me think that they're going to start saying what's going to happen on a larger scale. So already I'm feeling hopeful. I'm getting excited. Could this be a 4 in a conclusion? Maybe. Cross your fingers. If these violent values continue to be taught through popular media, it's promising so far, then, I love an if-then situation. It's really given me some big picture vibes. The next generations can expect peace to be a rarity. It's given me a cautionary tale situation. It's telling me that our society is going to have some problems with peace if we don't fix this problem. That, to me, my friends, looks like about as beautiful as a big picture as I have ever seen. So they crushed the big picture. So let's highlight the fact that this is a thorough, and so I said, this is a thorough, sophisticated, there should be a comma after thorough because of comma rules, thorough, sophisticated, big picture with extended consequences included. I don't want that it will affect society. I want that it will affect society and how. In a good way or a bad way, I don't care which way you take it. As long as you have the how in there, that's what I care about. Yeah? So far, so good. So now they're sitting at a 4 for the second rubric row, and I'm just going to go into their connection and hope they don't do anything to downgrade that 4, right? So let's go into their connection. The first thing I look at is that they've only connected one previous article of their choice. Not trying to connect all of them. Let's not be overachievers, right? Let's just get the minimum right, yeah? So I'm looking for one connected article, and I'm looking that they did not reintroduce the first article, but they did formally introduce the second article. And I'm looking for some transition language here. So this is actually some fine transition language. They said, Coyne et al.'s writing relates to the article. That's some transition language. I'm happy with that. I'm so glad to see it, but they're still missing it in important places previously. Do you see a problem with how they've incorporated the et al. Here? So there shouldn't be a comma here. But what they did that's really sophisticated, and a lot of you I saw run into this problem in your summary number 4, and you're like, oh no, I don't know what to do. I have to make Coyne et al., the whole group, possessive. I have to say that they had an article, and I know an apostrophe goes there, but how the crap do I do that with et al.? Well, this is how. It looks gross, but this is how. Coyne et al.'s. Spell et al. As you normally would. Just think of it as how you would spell a normal word. It's just that the period is one of those letters. Then apostrophe before the S. Because we're talking about them as a group, they're one entity, not a plural entity. If it were plural, we'd put the apostrophe behind the S, but it's not. It's one group, right? So the writing relates to the article. I love this transitional phrase. They did a nice job here. This is just one, so far, one conventions error. So that goes in my mind in the fourth row. But so far, if it's just one, I'm going to always give you just one little mistake. Just always will give you just one, right? I'm not even going to mark it down yet in my mind. Everything else has been so sophisticated. I'm good, right? Just an oversight. And then they're introducing the text, the new text, with the full title. So that is a correctly cited MLA. And look at their use of commas. The title of the article has become an apositive or interjectory phrase. You don't need to know that. You just need to know that it's interrupting a sentence that already exists. So there has to be a comma on both parts of it, supporting it. They did a great job. So impressed. And then we have the author's full name. And you don't need to put in the author's credibility as you would in a summary about the piece. So we just need the author's full name. If you put their credibility in there, I'm not going to be mad about it. It's good practice, but I don't require it here, right? So now we need to give a very quick summary of the article that they're bringing in. In Party's article, he speaks. Technically, this saying that this is a he is wrong because we can't genderize people that we don't know, so it should be they speak. But I'm not going to, that's not the hill that I'm dying on today, so I would just ignore that, right? In Party's article, they speak of how today's superheroes have influences and values integrated into them that result in a negative impact on the viewer. He just gave me a summary of the previous article. Really lovely job, and then he cited it. That makes me very happy. So glad to see that. So far, it's at a 4 still. Then, I love the use of this beautiful transition language because this is telling me that there's a comparison happening. Loving it, right? And then they're going to tell me something about the second article, about the original article, and they did the et al. Right this time. Coin et al. Summarized this same idea by, and if you would stop it, Coin et al. Summarized this same idea, I would not give you credit for the connection. Because you've only told me that there is a connection, you haven't told me how it connects, right? So if they would have stopped here, I wouldn't be happy. But I need the why does it connect? What are the details? By presenting that interaction with superhero media has shown an increase of negative and violent behavior in the viewer. I love it. So they've connected these two really beautifully. They've highlighted the parts of both. I see a connection here. But now I want them to bring the connection home and really summarize that connection in detail in a sophisticated way for me. So let's see. In both articles. Love it. Yes. Totally crushing that connection. In both articles. So happy to see this so far. The authors primarily suggest, and I love how they chose to say authors because there's more than 2 authors. There's actually lots, like 8. So I love that they chose this reference. The authors primarily suggest that superhero media is not as beneficial for young viewers as initially believed, and the negative aspects of it outweigh the positives. So happy with this connection. And they've cited both articles. So if you're talking about both articles in the same sentence, they've cited the first one here with a semicolon, no page number, but still keeping the et al. And the second one here, and they've done it in alphabetical order in parentheses. Never been so happy. I'm so excited to say that they never downgraded themselves. So for that conclusion and connection, they get a 4. So happy to see it. Right? And so far, I only saw those 2 minor style errors. So I would keep their style at proficient. And then when I'm looking at MLA, so far their MLA was beautiful, perfect, no big errors. The only conventions error I saw was this mistaken use of this comma. I'm going to give them that one. And also there was technically a conventions error when they said he speaks. But that's kind of hard, and that's not what I'm focusing on right now, so I'm just going to let that go. And overall, they were so meticulous with MLA. They did such a nice job with their conventions overall that I'm going to keep the MLA formatting and conventions at a 4. So while this paper isn't perfect, it's beautiful for their 4th summary. I'm so impressed. This is a 94, I think. Wait, 90, yeah, 94. So I would give them a 94, and all of their summaries before it would also receive a 94 if they turned them in on time. Do we see a little bit more closely what I'm looking for now? Does this help illuminate these ideas for you? All right, so put your summaries at the end of your table here. And now we're going to go through it with your friends. Oh, I forgot. I forgot this table.